My name is Zara Meadows. I'm 22 and I am a writer, a poet from Belfast, from West Belfast. I started writing poems seriously about 5 or 6 years ago, but I had been writing wee stories long before that. I had some friends who were writing poems and they were really encouraging. I ended up getting a poem commended in a competition in England when I was about 17, and that was the first step for me, I think, breaking in. These are so many barriers of access, I think, with something like poetry. It's seen as like a very high art, but it was just that moment of getting that poem commended made me think this is something I can do. And actually very exciting, this month actually, at the end of the month, my first book is coming out. It's called The End of Art, and it's being published by 14 Poems, which is a queer publisher in London, and they publish magazines and pamphlets of queer writing around the world. Yeah, and the book itself, it features Belfast, the Shankill, all stuff that's important to me. There's a lot of poems about my partner in that book as well. And yeah, it's just a bit of a snapshot of who I am and where I've been, and hopefully, yeah, people like it. I actually haven't ever been to the Duncairn before. Obviously, coming to school very close to here, I would drive past it. But no, I've never been inside this building, and it is a beautiful building. Like, I heard about the open call just on social media. This sort of thing I think is fantastic because this is the area I come from, very close to here, just over in the Greater Shankill. So I think any opportunity for young artists in an area like this, you got to take up, because this is what's needed in these communities, I think, definitely. In terms of influence in my writing, I am really influenced just by place. Belfast, West Belfast, Greater Shankill, the Shankill Road itself, just because that's the kind of map in my head. I don't live there anymore and I haven't for a while, but when I go back in my own head and think about place, that's where I'm writing from. And it is an area that you don't really see in poetry, and you don't really hear of poetry from that being written from people there or about there. And I always find that any art that's produced about the Shankill in particular, it can be quite derogatory. It's kind of poking fun. It's an easy target, I suppose, and I want to kind of work back on those stereotypes. And sort of instill that humanity that is there and the integrity of those people that I was raised by and grew up with and grew up surrounded by. A lot of the poets I'm really influenced by in contemporary Northern Irish writing, people like Scott McKendry and Stephen Sexton, all went through the PhD pipeline. And that is something that I would be really interested in. I'd love to teach poetry. I'd love to continue giving workshops of poetry, particularly in areas like this, working class areas where those barriers of access are just so high, and people don't think that poetry is for them. Where I believe poetry is for everybody. It's class. It's such a class way of being able to express yourself. I'm most influenced, I think, by Kieran Carson, who this would be his neck of the woods, just because there was no really voice like it. I mean, he was just mental. These massive long lines of poetry about just rambling about Belfast and, you know, the places he had been and things he had seen, and would just make it so interesting and so funny, and just do things with language that were so strange and unusual and unexpected. I'm trying to do that in my poetry. Obviously, I think every poem I write, that's what I'm trying to do. You've got to make it better than the last one, and you've got to make it weirder than the last one, and like stranger and sillier. Yeah, that's it, I think. This poem is called Bergamot. Bergamot. He'd read all the books on growing fruit, damsons, gages, gooseberries, mulberries, strawberries, blueberries, white currants, black currants, apples, apricots, cherries, melons, the medlars that first arched their white flowered backs in the late spring sun. Of them all, his favourite was the bergamot. He dreamed of a tree in Calabria and the firm sound of sour oranges smacking dry mud. When the big boss brought out the grenade, he couldn't believe just how much its shape, sang bergamot into his ear. He raised the bitter yield to his lips, bit down.